This is going to be a video lecture on source insertion and documentation. What I mean by source insertion is picking a piece of information or a direct quote from your source to insert into the flow of the paper, right into one of the paragraphs. And I want to just talk about all of the details of how we do that. Okay, what do we need to document? What do we need to be sure that we record showing where we got the information from? Well, first of all, use of any direct quotation, of course, and generally use of any fact that you didn't know before you began working on the assignment. So if it's something that you learned while you were doing research, then that would be something that you would document in your final paper. And then if you use anyone's structure, organization, or overview, even if you don't use the specific facts, but if you use, for example, their organization of subpoints, then you would also document that by saying something like, so-and-so breaks down the subject in this way, and then you would document with what we're about to talk about in terms of inserting the page number and everything. What doesn't need to be documented? Anything that is your original ideas, phrasing, or wording, or any facts from your life, which you use as examples, or any common knowledge, just something that would be listed on any number of books or websites and which the average adult could know or could easily look up. For example, you would not have to document that Columbus is the capital of Ohio. That's a common knowledge fact. All right. Methods of insertion. So now you're taking information from your source and you're putting it into the paper. There's three main ways to do it. You can summarize the entire source in, say, a paragraph, or you can give a paraphrase of a specific piece of information, or you can give a direct quotation using one specific sentence or sentences or phrases and putting them in quotation marks using the exact words. The most common approach is the paraphrase, taking some bits of information and restating them in your own words. Even though you've restated in your own words, you need to document. You need to be clear where you got that information from. Key components of inserting into a paper like that are the signal phrase, which indicate the writer and the article source. And then the first time that you mention anything from any one source, you should mention the author or the publisher. So you're always going to mention the author or the publisher and the article, and you're going to give the page number. More on that in a moment. But the key thing is the first time you use something from any source, you use this signal phrase where you mention the writer or the publisher and the article or the name of the web page. What would you choose to insert? What we call quotable quotes. In other words, you choose information from the source which has special interest. Either you choose a sentence which provides a good summary, or maybe you pick somewhere where they give information that's especially convincing or interesting or shocking. So you don't want to just insert dull stuff. You want to pick something that's especially interesting. That's a quotable quote. Okay, the information you insert must be connected to the rest of the paper. You don't want to just drop in your information or your quotation, boom, like a big bomb. You want to have within your sentences, leading up to the information, some discussion of why it's of interest or why it's important, and then always be sure to connect it to your main point of your paragraph. So there should be explanation there of why that particular information is of interest and how it connects to the rest of the paragraph and the rest of the paper. You would put in a summary if you're going to discuss an entire article. You use the paragraph if you're just referring to some of the information, and you'd use a quotation if the exact wording is important. Okay, so or it's especially well stated and the wording is especially beautiful or clear. So you can pick any of those choices. Again, the paraphrase is the most common because then you put in the information but restate it in your own words. That way it blends in well with the paper, but you still document where you got that information from. Now, Formatting of direct quotations. You can quote in a direct quotation an entire sentence or more than a sentence or parts of a sentence. Sometimes students think you only can do one sentence. No, you can do more than a sentence, you can do parts of a sentence. But you put the quotation marks only around the exact words in the original. So just the words that are exactly the same is where you put the quotation marks. And if your quotation is an entire sentence within a larger sentence that you wrote, you would use another capital at the beginning of the quotation itself. You can use brackets if you need to make minor changes, like change the end of a word to change the verb tense to make the quotation match the rest of your sentence. Well, you would just put those changed letters, like say you change talk to talked, you just put the ed in brackets. Or maybe you need to just insert a small word like the or an. You can do that by using brackets. You can use the ellipsis, which is the 3 dots, if you need to leave something out of the original. For example, if in the middle of the sentence that you want to quote, there's a phrase or a piece that you don't need because it doesn't bear on your point, you can leave that out and put the ellipsis there. But you want to be sure that you're not changing the meaning if you use brackets and ellipsis. Formatting the citation. Now, by formatting we mean where do you put the commas, where do you put the page number, all of that. Remember, that's mostly there, the author name, the page number, so that someone else reading your paper, if they wanted to, could go find that information. So it's far more important that you have the information there than that it's, you know, specific to any particular pattern, okay? Make sure that you document every source. It's much more important that you have the documentation than, for example, that you know exactly where to put the commas or whatever. Remember, if you don't put in the citation information, the author, the article, the page number, that's plagiarism, okay? That's much worse than just doing it wrong. So a lot of times students aren't sure they know exactly how to do it, so they just leave it out. Don't do that. Put it in no matter what. Remember that a full citation consists of the in-text references, which is what we're talking about in this video, and also the works cited list or the references list, which you'll also have to include. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it does include both those pieces. The idea is that the in-text citation, what you put in with the paragraph, in other words, you put in the author's name, you put in the page number, refers people to the works cited or the references list, and then that way they can find the actual piece in the library from what's in the references list. So the in-text citation is only enough information that they know where to look on the references list, which gives all the information they need to find it in the library or on the internet. Now, I was mentioning earlier the signal phrase or the cue phrase at the beginning of an in-text citation. The first time you use information from any source, you need this cue phrase, which means within that sentence, you want to mention the author and the article name. If the author is not listed, you would use the publisher name or the name of the website. And then at the end, you would have the page number or the paragraph number in parentheses. So the author or the article name in the sentence is preferred, and it's always putting in the sentence the first time. And then later, the second time and beyond, you can put it in parentheses at the end of the sentence. Speaking of the parentheses at the end of the sentence, the period goes after the parentheses at the end of the sentence where you put the page number. Now, after the first citation, all you need is the last name only of the author, or you can shorten up the article name, like you could use just the first couple words or just the most important words. So the first time in the sentence, you should have the full author and article name, but after that, you can just use the last name or shortened name for the article. If you don't have page numbers, you would use paragraph numbers with parenthesis P-A-R-A period space and the number. That's important to know because often you don't have page numbers because you're looking at like a web page. So then you would count the paragraph numbers. Do it just like written on this screen, parenthesis small p, A-R-A period space, and then the number, parenthesis. Okay, I've got a couple samples for you here. Here's a sample in-text citation of a paraphrase with a cue phrase. So again, this would be the first time that we mention something from this particular book. So we need the cue phrase, and it's a paraphrase, not a direct quote. So you notice I say Captain Superfun, the author, in his guidebook 20 Ways to Entertain Kids on a Rainy Day. That's naming the actual book, or it might be the article if this was an article instead of a book. Suggest board games with small prizes for winners, parenthesis 21. 21 would be the page number on which he makes this suggestion. The period follows the number 21. So when it's a page number, it's just the number. No number sign, no page, no word page, nothing like that. Okay? Again, if it wasn't a page number but a paragraph number instead, then you would mark parenthesis PARA period space and the number. Here's the second time. So the second time, I do not have to mention all the information. I can just use the last name or a shortened name of the article or the book. So here I just say super fun. Also advocates activities with built-in rewards such as cooking favorite treats. Okay? And he says that on page 45, and I've put it in my own words so there's no quotation marks. And this is the second use, so all I'm saying is his last name. Super fun. Now, just to contrast, this would be a direct quotation. So now I have his exact words with the quotation marks. And you'll see I moved it around a little bit. This time I mentioned the book first. In his book, 20 Ways to Entertain Kids on a Rainy Day, Captain Superfun points out that quotation mark, children need to move around on rainy days, so physical activities which are safe for indoors are necessary. Quotation mark space, parenthesis, page number, parenthesis, period. Note that format. Quotation mark space, parenthesis, page number, parenthesis, period. That is the MLA format. And another thing I want you to note is that the quotation is blended in with my sentence. It all reads clearly and smoothly as one sentence. That's important. Here's the second time I'm quoting from Superfun. So now, again, I don't need his complete name or the name of the book. I can just use the last name. Superfun gives clear instructions. Quote, always engage all the children at some level, even the baby or a sullen teen, space, paren, page number, paren, period. Okay, now here, the inserted quotation is a sentence all by itself, so it has a capital letter. And I had mentioned that earlier. This is an example. So that's what they should look like. One thing you'll notice I did was I had some sentence variety there, so I didn't make all the sentences the same. Sometimes when you're writing, put the author name first, sometimes put the article name first, sometimes put the information first. Put the author or the article at the end, or either the author or the article at the end. Mix it up so that it doesn't get boring to read.